My mom secretly funded my high school bully's tuition with my inheritance, so I burned her perfect life to the ground in a courtroom showdown. I used to think the worst betrayal would come from a stranger until I discovered it had been living under my own roof for 8 years, wearing my mother's face and calling it self-love. My name is Lucas Anderson and I'm 26 years old. I work as a software engineer for a mid-sized tech company in Portland, Oregon. For the past 3 years, since my father passed away from cancer, I've been living with my mother, Rachel. In the house where I grew up, it seemed like the right thing to do. She was lonely, grieving, and I wanted to make sure she was okay. Dad had left us the house and a decent life insurance policy, including a college fund he'd specifically set aside for my future education and career development. What I didn't know was that while I was trying to take care of her, she was busy destroying every ounce of trust I'd ever had in family love and human decency. The first sign that something was off came about 6 months ago. Mom started going out more often, which initially made me happy. After Dad's death, she'd become something of a hermit, rarely leaving the house except for work at the accounting firm where she'd worked for 15 years. So when she began mentioning dinner plans with friends from work or book club meetings, I was genuinely pleased that she was trying to rebuild her social life. But then the little details started adding up. She bought new clothes, not morning attire, but bright, cheerful dresses that made her look younger. She started wearing makeup again, something she hadn't done since Dad's funeral. Her phone was constantly buzzing with text messages, and she'd smile in a way I hadn't seen since before Dad got sick. She even got her hair done at an expensive salon downtown. "You look great, Mom," he told her one evening as she was getting ready to go out. "It's good to see you taking care of yourself again." She blushed like a teenager. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'm just trying to get back to living. You know your father wouldn't want me to stay sad forever." I hugged her, feeling genuinely happy for what seemed like her recovery from grief. If only I had known that her newfound happiness built on a foundation of lies that would soon collapse and bury me underneath. The second sign was financial. I'd been helping Mom manage the household expenses since Dad died, and I'd noticed some irregularities in our bank statements. Nothing dramatic, just small withdrawals here and there, sometimes for amounts that seemed larger than what our normal expenses would justify. When I asked about them, she'd wave me off. "Oh, that's just the book club. We went to that new restaurant downtown, or I had to get the car serviced." And you know how expensive that can be? The explanations always sounded reasonable, so I didn't push. Mom had never been irresponsible with money before, and she was going through a difficult time. If spending a little extra on social activities helped her heal. But then I started noticing that the college fund Dad had left for me, money that was supposed to be untouchable except education-related expenses, was also showing activity. When I brought this up to Mom, she looked flustered. "Oh, that?" she said, not meeting my eyes. "I had to borrow a little bit for some unexpected expenses." "Don't worry, I'll pay it back as soon as my next bonus comes in." "What kind of unexpected expenses?" "Just house stuff. You know how old this place is? There's always something that needs fixing." I couldn't argue with that logic. Our house was built in the 1980s, and it did seem like we were constantly dealing with plumbing issues, electrical problems, or appliance breakdowns. Still, something felt off about her explanation. But I couldn't put my finger on what the third sign was. The phone calls. Mom had always been social, but suddenly she was getting calls at all hours, early morning, late evening. Even during dinner, she'd always step outside to take them, claiming they were from work or the book club. But her voice would drop to an intimate whisper that didn't sound like professional or casual friendship conversations. One evening, I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when I heard her on the back porch talking in that same low, intimate tone. "I miss you too," she was saying. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow." "No, Lucas won't be home until late. He's working on some big project at the office." I froze. Who was she talking to, and why was she discussing my schedule like she was planning something secretive? I crept closer to the back door, feeling guilty about eavesdropping, but unable to stop myself. "You make me feel young again," she continued. "I haven't felt this way since..." Well, since before everything got so complicated. My heart started racing. Was Mom seeing someone? The thought hadn't really occurred to me before. I mean, she was 52, attractive, and it had been 3 years since Dad died. It would be natural for her to start dating again, but why all the secrecy? "I love you too," she whispered, and my stomach dropped. Mom was definitely seeing someone, and it was serious enough that they were exchanging "I love you," but why was she hiding it from me? I would have been happy for her if she'd found someone who made her smile again. Unless there was something about this relationship that she knew I wouldn't approve of. The fourth sign was the one that changed everything. I was working from home one afternoon when I decided to grab lunch at the cafe downtown. As I was walking back to my car, I saw a familiar figure sitting at one of the outdoor tables. It was Mom, but she wasn't alone. She was sitting across from a man I recognized, and my blood ran cold. Mark Davis, Jacob Davis's father. Jacob Davis, the name alone was enough to make my hands shake, and my chest tighten with the kind of panic I hadn't felt since high school. Jacob had been my personal tormentor. From sophomore year until graduation, he was bigger than me, stronger than me, and just seemed to take genuine pleasure in making my life miserable. It started with small things. Knocking books out of my hands in the hallway, calling me names, making jokes about my clothes and my glasses. But it escalated quickly. By junior year, Jacob was shoving me into lockers, stealing my lunch money, and once memorably, Hay pantsed me in front of the entire cafeteria. The humiliation was so devastating that I pretended to be sick for a week afterward just to avoid facing everyone who had seen it. The worst part wasn't the physical bullying, it was the psychological warfare. Jacob had a gift for finding your deepest insecurities and exploiting them. He knew I was shy around girls, so he'd loudly announce to anyone within earshot that I'd never been kissed. He knew I was proud of my grades, so he'd accidentally spill things on my homework or steal my assignments. He knew I was close to my parents, so he'd make up stories about them that he'd spread around school. By senior year, I was seeing a therapist twice a week for anxiety and depression. I'd gone from being a confident, outgoing kid to someone who was afraid of his own shadow. The bullying only stopped when Jacob graduated and left for college, but the damage was done. It took me years to build back any sense of self-worth, and even now, at 26, I sometimes still heard his voice in my head when I was feeling insecure, and there was his father, Mark Davis, sitting across from my mother at a cafe, holding her hand like they were lovers. I ducked behind a parked car and watched them. Mom was laughing at something Mark was saying, her face lit up with genuine joy. Mark was leaning across the table, stroking her cheek with his thumb. They looked happy, comfortable, like they'd been doing this for a while. How long had my mother been secretly dating the father of the person who had nearly destroyed my mental health in high school? I felt sick, literally physically sick. I managed to make it back to my car before I threw up in the parking lot that night at dinner. I watched Mom carefully. She was humming while she cooked, practically glowing with happiness. When I asked how her day was, she smiled and said, "Oh, same old routine, work errands, the usual. Did you do anything fun?" "Not really, just grabbed lunch by myself downtown." The lie came so easily. So, naturally that I wondered how many other lies she'd been telling me. How long had this been going on? Did it start before Dad died? The thought made me feel even sicker over the next few weeks. I became obsessed with figuring out the timeline. I started paying closer attention to Mom's behavior, her schedule, her moods. I noticed that she was happiest on the days when she came home late from work or book club. I noticed that she always seemed to know when I'd be working late or out with friends, as if she was tracking my schedule to plan her own activities around my absence. I started checking our financial records more carefully, and what I found made my blood boil. The small withdrawals I'd noticed weren't so small when you added them up. Over the past 8 months, Mom had taken nearly $15,000 from various accounts, including my college fund. The money had been spent on restaurants, hotels, shopping trips, and even what looked like vacation expenses. But the most infuriating discovery came when I found a receipt that had fallen out of Mom's purse. It was from the University of Oregon for a tuition payment in the amount of $8,500. The student name on the receipt was Jacob Davis. My mother had used my college fund, money my father had saved specifically for my education and career development, to pay tuition for the person who had tormented me throughout high school. I sat in my room that night staring at the receipt, feeling like my entire world was collapsing. It wasn't just that Mom was dating Mark Davis, although that was bad enough. It wasn't even that she'd been lying to me about it, although that hurt terribly. It was that she had actively, knowingly used my money to benefit the person who had caused me years of therapy, emotional trauma. Did she not remember what Jacob had done to me? Did she not care? Or worse, did she remember and decide that her happiness with Mark was more important than the pain his son had caused me? I needed answers, and I needed them now. The next evening, I waited until Mom got home from what she claimed was dinner with the girls from accounting. She was practically floating as she walked through the door, her cheeks flushed and her hair slightly mused. "Mom?" he said, standing up from the couch where I'd been waiting. "We need to talk." Something in my voice must have alerted her that this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. Her smile faded slightly and she sat down her purse with careful precision. "Of course, sweetheart, what's on your mind?" I held up the tuition receipt. "I found this." Her face went completely white. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then she sank down into Dad's old armchair, suddenly looking every one of her 52 years. "Lucas, I can explain. Can you explain why you used my college fund to pay tuition for Jacob Davis? The same Jacob Davis who made my life hell for 3 years?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see her mind working, trying to come up with an explanation that wouldn't sound completely insane. "It's not what you think," she finally said. "Then tell me what it is, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're dating Mark Davis and using Dad's money to support his family." Yes, Mark and I have been seeing each other, but Lucas, he's not the man you think he is. He's kind and funny, and he makes me feel alive again in a way I haven't felt since your father got sick." How long have you been seeing him?" She looked down at her hands. "About 8 months. 8 months, so you started dating him right around the time Dad's life insurance money came through?" It's not like that. What about Jacob's tuition? How do you explain that?" "Jacob is a good kid, Lucas. He's turned his life around since high school. He's studying engineering just like you did. Mark is struggling to pay for his education. And you thought you'd use my money to help the person who gave me panic attacks and depression? He was young. Kids do stupid things when they're young. That doesn't mean he deserves to have his future ruined because his family can't afford college." I stared at her in disbelief. "So you decided to ruin my future instead?" "Your future isn't ruined, Lucas. You have a good job, you're doing well. I'm doing well because I worked my ass off to overcome what Jacob did to me. I'm successful, despite what he put me through, not because of it, and now you're rewarding him for nearly destroying my mental health." "You're being dramatic." The words hit me like a slap. "Dramatic, Mom? I was in therapy for 2 years because of what Jacob did to me. I had panic attacks. I considered changing schools. I couldn't sleep at night because I was so afraid of facing him the next day. And you think I'm being dramatic? That was a long time ago. Lucas, you need to let go of the past. Let go of the past. You want me to let go of the past while you're actively using my money to benefit the person who created that past? She stood up, her own anger starting to show that money isn't just yours, Lucas. This family has expenses, obligations. Dad left that money specifically for my education and career development. It's in the trust documents I checked. You're not supposed to touch it except for those purposes. I'm your mother. I think I know what's best for this family. What's best for this family? Or what's best for your relationship with Mark Davis? How dare you? How dare I? What question why you're pre-stealing from me to support your boyfriend's son? The same son who used to call me in the hallways. Tell everyone I'd never amount to anything. Mom's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought maybe she was finally understanding the depth of what she'd done, but when she spoke again, her words shattered any hope I had for reconciliation. Jacob feels terrible about how he treated you in high school. Mark told me he's grown up a lot. He's not the same person he was back. And you know this, how have you been talking to Jacob? Well, yes, we've all had dinner together a few times. He's really a lovely young man now, Lucas. Very polite, very respectful. I think if you gave him a chance, you've been having dinner with him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You've been having dinner with the person who tormented me using money that was meant for my future, and you think I should give him a chance? I think you should try to forgive and move on. Holding on to anger isn't healthy. You know what else isn't healthy? Having your mother betray you for a man she's known for 8 months. I am not betraying you. I'm trying to build a life for myself after 3 years of mourning your father. I'm trying to find some happiness, and yes, that includes Mark and his family. And sorry if that's difficult for you, but I can't live my life based on some high school grudge. High school grudge, my voice was getting louder now, and I didn't care, Mom. That grudge put me in therapy. That grudge gave me trust issues that I'm still working through. That grudge nearly broke me, and you know it? You saw what it did to me, and I also saw you overcome it. You're successful. You're strong, because I had parents who supported me and believed in me, or at least I thought I did. She stepped back like I'd hit her. Lucas, that's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that Dad saved money for my future and you're spending it on the family of the person who tried to destroy me? Is it fair that you've been lying to me for 8 months about where you go and who you see? Is it fair that you're asking me to forgive someone who never even apologized to me directly? Maybe if you talk to Jacob. No, the word came out flat and final. No, I will not talk to Jacob. No, I will not have dinner with your boyfriend's family. No, I will not pretend that what happened in high school doesn't matter. And no, I will not stand by while you steal from me to support them. I wasn't stealing, then what would you call it? You took money that wasn't yours without my permission to benefit someone else. If that's not stealing, what is it? She couldn't answer that because we both knew I was right. I want the money back, I said quietly. What, all of it? Every penny you took from my accounts? Every dollar you spent on Mark and Jacob? Every cent of Dad's money that went to support your secret relationship? I want it back, Lucas. That's not realistic. Some of that money has already been spent. Then you'll have to figure out how to get it back, sell something, take out a loan, ask your boyfriend for help. I don't care how you do it, but I want my money returned. And if I can't, I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had raised me, loved me, and now betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. And then I'll take you to court. The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. Mom's face went through a series of expressions: shock, disbelief, hurt, and finally anger. You would sue your own mother? You stole from your own son? I was trying to help. You were helping yourself. You were helping Mark. You were helping Jacob. The only person you weren't helping was me. And I'm the only person in this equation who's actually your family. Mark and Jacob are part of my family now, too. No, they're not. They're strangers. You chose over your son. I turned to walk away, but her voice stopped me. Lucas, please, can't we work this out? Can't we find some kind of compromise? I turned back to look at her one more time. Mom, 8 months ago, if you had come to me and said you'd met someone and were falling in love, I would have been happy for you if you told me his name was Mark Davis. I would have been concerned, but I would have tried to understand if you'd asked me for help with some of Jacob's expenses because you cared about this family and wanted to do something nice for them. I might have even considered it despite our history. Then why? But you didn't do any of those things. You lied to me. You snuck around behind my back. You stole from me. You used my father's money he saved while he was dying. Money he specifically left for my future to benefit the person who nearly broke me. And then when I confronted you about it, you told me I was being dramatic and that I needed to get over it. She was crying now, but I felt nothing. The part of me that would normally comfort her, that would hate to see her in pain, had her been shut off somewhere between discovering the tuition receipt and hearing her tell me to forgive Jacob. You made your choice, Mom. You chose Mark and Jacob over me. Now I'm making mine. I went upstairs and called a lawyer. The legal consultation was illuminating. According to the attorney I spoke with, Mom's use of the trust fund money was clearly in violation of Dad's will, and terms of the trust he'd established, the money was specifically designated for my education and career development, and using it for anything else, especially without my knowledge or consent, constituted a breach of fiduciary duty. You have a very strong case, the lawyer told me. The documentation is clear. The unauthorized use of funds is well documented through bank records. I'd estimate you could recover not only the principal amount that was misused, but also damages for emotional distress and possibly punitive damages as well. How long would something like this take? A case is straightforward, probably 6 to 8 months. Assuming the defendant doesn't want to drag it out, Most people settle once they realize how solid the plaintiff's case is. And what if she can't pay the money back then? We pursue other assets? The house, her retirement accounts, whatever it takes to make you whole. The house where I'd grown up, where Dad had lived his last years. Where Mom and I had shared what I thought was our grief over losing him. The thought of forcing her to sell it made me sick, but not as sick as the thought of letting her get away with what she'd done. I'd like to proceed, I told the lawyer. The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later. Mom was served with papers at her office, which I knew would humiliate her, but I was past caring about her feelings. She'd shown how much she cared about mine. She called me that night, crying and begging me to reconsider. Lucas, please, we can work this out. You don't need to involve lawyers and courts. We're family? We were family, I said, until you decided that Mark and Jacob were more important. That's not true. You'll always be the most important person in my life, really? Then why did you steal from me to support Jacob's education? I wasn't thinking clearly. I was in love and I made some bad decisions. You made bad decisions for 8 months, Mom. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a pattern of lying, stealing, and betrayal. Please just drop the lawsuit. I'll find a way to pay you back, I promise. How? By taking more money from accounts that don't belong to you, by borrowing from Mark, by selling Dad's tools and furniture to pay for your boyfriend's son's college. I'll get a second job. I'll work nights and weekends. You should have thought about. Before you decided to play house with the Davis family, the conversation went in circles. An hour before I finally hung up on her. She tried calling back several times, but I didn't answer. The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings, document discovery, and depositions. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, receipts, witness statements from the University of Oregon confirming that Mom had paid Jacob's tuition. Mark Davis was also deposed, and his testimony revealed the full scope of Mom's financial support. She'd paid for their dates, their weekend trips, his car repairs, and even groceries for his household. The most damaging evidence came from Mom's own phone and computer. Her text messages with Mark showed a pattern of promising to take care of things financially and discussing how to keep their relationship secret from me in one particularly damning exchange. Mark thanked her for helping Jacob at school, and Mom replied, Lucas doesn't need to know everything about how I spend my money, except it wasn't her money. It was Dad's money left specifically for me. During her deposition, Mom tried to paint herself as a grieving widow who had made some poor financial decisions while navigating new love. But under cross-examination, she was forced to admit that she knew the trust fund money was designated for my education, that she knew I would disapprove of her relationship with Mark, and that she had deliberately concealed both the relationship and the financial transfers. Mistress Anderson, my lawyer, asked, did you ever consider discussing these expenditures with your son before making them? I didn't think it was necessary. You didn't think it was necessary to discuss using his education fund to pay tuition for the young man who had bullied him in high school? Jacob isn't the same person he was in high school. But you were aware of the history between Jacob and your son? Yes, and you were aware that your son had required therapy due to Jacob's treatment of him? Yes, but you felt it was appropriate to use your son's money to benefit Jacob anyway. I thought Lucas would understand if he knew how much Jacob had changed, so you made that decision for him without consulting him or informing him? Yes, and you continued to make that decision over a period of 8 months? Yes, during which time you spent approximately $37,000 of your son's money on your boyfriend and his family. Mom broke down crying at that point, but the damage was done. $37,000, the number was even higher than I calculated. The case went to trial, but it was a formality. The judge ruled in my favor on all counts, ordering Mom to repay the full amount, plus interest, court costs, and $15,000 in damages for emotional distress. The total judgment was just over $55,000. Mom didn't have that kind of money available, which meant she would have to sell the house where I'd grown up, where Dad had died, where 3 generations of our family had lived, the house that was supposed to be my inheritance someday. I felt terrible about it, but I also felt like I didn't have a choice. If I let this slide, what message would that send? That family members could steal from each other as long as they said they were sorry afterwards. That love and trust didn't matter as much as keeping the peace. No, some betrayals are too deep to forgive, and some actions have consequences that can't be undone with apologies. The house sold quickly. It was in a good neighborhood and the market was strong. Mom moved into a small apartment across town. Mark Davis, presumably realizing that his meal ticket was gone, ended their relationship shortly after the trial concluded. She called to tell me about the breakup. I think hoping for sympathy, or maybe hoping that I'd see it as proof that she was sorry. I hope you're happy, she said during that last phone call. I've lost everything. My home, my relationship, my son. Was your revenge worth it? It wasn't revenge, Mom. It was justice. And you didn't lose me because of the lawsuit. You lost me the moment you decided Jacob Davis's education was more important than keeping your word to Dad and maintaining trust with me. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Every day for 8 months you woke up and chose to lie to me. Every time you transferred money to pay for their expenses, you chose them over me. Every time you had dinner with Jacob and listened to him talk about his bright future, so a future you were funding with my money, you chose to prioritize his well-being over mine. I thought you were strong enough to handle it. I am strong enough to handle it, strong enough to handle your betrayal, strong enough to fight for what's right, and strong enough to build a new life without people who would steal from me and then call me selfish for I moved to Seattle 3 months later. I used the money from the lawsuit settlement to put a down payment on a small condo in a nice neighborhood near the waterfront. I found a new job at a tech startup that specialized in cybersecurity. Fitting, given what I'd learned about protecting myself from people who seemed trustworthy on the surface. I haven't spoken to Mom since the day the settlement check arrived. She's tried to contact me a few times. Birthday cards, Christmas presents sent to my old address, voicemails that I delete without listening to. I've blocked her number and email, and I've made it clear to the few family members we still have in common that I don't want any information about her life or any attempts at reconciliation. Some people think I'm being too harsh. My cousin Emma told me that Mom is heartbroken and deeply regrets what happened. My uncle called to say that family feuds are pointless and that life is too short to hold grudges. But they don't understand. This wasn't a simple disagreement or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a systematic betrayal of trust that lasted for months. Mom looked me in the eye every day for 8 months while stealing from me and lying to me. She used money that my dying father had saved for my future to benefit the person who had traumatized me in my youth, and when confronted with what she'd done, her response wasn't remorse. It was to tell me I was being dramatic and needed to get over it. I learned something important through this whole experience. Family isn't just about blood relationships or shared history. Family is about trust, respect, and having each other's backs when the world gets difficult. It's about making sacrifices for each other.
Yes.
But also about honest communication and mutual support. The woman who raised me stopped being my family the moment she decided that maintaining her secret relationship was more important than maintaining her integrity with me. The woman who used my inheritance to pay for Jacob Davis's college stopped being my mother the moment she chose his future over mine. I don't hate her. Hate requires an emotional investment that I'm no longer willing to make. I simply recognize that she's not safe for me to have in my life. She's proven that she'll prioritize her own wants over my well-being, that she'll lie to me when it's convenient, and that she'll steal from me if she thinks she can get away with it. I've built a new life in Seattle. Surrounded by friends who respect me and colleagues who value my work, I started dating again. Something I put on hold while I was dealing with the emotional aftermath of Mom's betrayal. I'm seeing a therapist to work through the trust issues that this situation has created, but also to continue processing the original trauma that Jacob inflicted on me years ago. I'm finally in a place where I can address that pain without the added confusion of knowing that my own mother thought it didn't matter. Sometimes late at night I think about the house where I grew up. I drive by it sometimes when I'm back in Portland for work, and it makes me sad to see strangers living there. To know that the place where my father spent his last years is gone forever. But then I remember that the house was just a building. Home was supposed to be the people inside it. To relationships and trust and love that made it feel safe. Mom destroyed that home long before the house was sold. She destroyed it the first time she lied to me about where she was going. She destroyed it the first time she transferred money from my account to pay for Mark and Jacob's expenses. She destroyed it the moment she decided that her happiness was worth more than my trust. I've learned that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones we trust the most. I've learned that love without respect is worthless, and that family obligations go both ways. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, and that protecting yourself from toxic people isn't selfish, it's survival. Most importantly, I've learned that I don't need permission from anyone to walk away from people who consistently choose to hurt me, even if those people happen to share my DNA. Blood may be thicker than water, but it's not thicker than self-respect, and it's not stronger than the right to live free from betrayal and manipulation. I'm 26 years old, and I'm finally building the life my father wanted me to have. One where I'm valued, respected, and free to pursue my own dreams without having to worry about the people closest to me sabotaging my future for their own game. It took lowing my mother to find my family, but that's a trade I'd make again in a heartbeat. Because at the end of the day, the family you choose is often more loyal than the family you're born into, and sometimes choosing yourself is the most important family decision you'll ever